Welcome to the Dr. Dank's podcast. I'm Larry Nagel, your host, and happy Father's Day. I'm here with, I wish it was Ganja Babe. We haven't found Ganja Babe yet, but we do have my producer. I guess we'll call him Ganja Guy for want of a better name. Now, let's start the podcast with a little bit more serious note. The t-shirts you see me wearing that say Mission Green, the Weldon Project, is actually about Weldon Angelo. He was a record producer back in the early days of Snoop Dogg, Tupac. Actually, we're going to put a link on here, Chris, right?
Yeah.
We're going to put a link on here so to take you directly to a video about his situation. But I believe he was sentenced to a total of 55 years, a mandatory minimum, over less than $1,000 worth of pot. This was back in 2002. But regardless, I wanted to explain why I'm supporting or so supportive of Mission Green. Mission Green does a lot of good things like helping those who can't afford good attorneys to find good legal help. They also work a lot with expungement, people that already served their time, and those same people being employed in the industry when normally they would not have the opportunity. I could go on for hours about that. Mostly anybody that came out of the black market, no matter how good they are or were, get sidestepped just because of the stigma attached to them.
My name is Weldon Angelos. In 2002, I was arrested in a sting operation for selling less than $1,000 worth of cannabis. I was forced to trial and I lost. Due to the mandatory minimum sentencing laws, I was sentenced to a 55-year prison term. I lost my career as a music producer. I lost my family. I lost the chance to raise my 2 sons for selling less cannabis than the current personal use limit in California. When I began serving my time, I never thought I would end up walking out those doors 13 years later. When I walked out those prison doors, I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life to helping those in situations like myself who did not have the luck that I did. This is my Mission Green. Through our specialized programming and initiatives, we aim to create change by providing relief to those who are still serving sentences for cannabis offenses, creating reentry programs for those who are integrating back into society after serving these sentences, assisting those who do not have access to legal counsel, and by working with policymakers on the local, state, and federal level to change the system at its core to prevent what happened to me from happening to others. This is an issue that affects all American families. This is Mission Green. Please join the movement. Go to theweldonproject.org to learn how to get involved. Thank you.
We're going to take some time today to talk to you about the brands that are represented, our primary brands that are represented on the podcast, our advertisers. One of them being the Buds and Brew Superstore, which is a unique concept. The Buds and Brew Superstore is going to give you the genetics for some of the finest cannabis in the world and also the finest hops. The reason that we're pairing them in the manner that we are is because hops and cannabis are brother and sister plants. They're both principal members of the Cannabaceae family. So, even though some people recognize the distinct flavors and aromas attached to both plants, most people don't. And for some stupid ass reason, it appears that they have kept this from us throughout history. I mean, pretty much know everything else about beer, you know. It's a wonder we don't know that the very hops that it's brewed with is so closely attached to cannabis. So the store will not only offer genetics that can be purchased in the form of seedlings and also seed clones. all genetically identical to the mother plants, and all fem. So there's no need to worry about whether you got a male or female plant. The effort you put forth, the time you put forth to grow a beautiful plant into flower, you'll always be rewarded with a premium product. The brewing will provide rootstock. There's a little different culture involved in hops than there is in growing cannabis, at least below the ground. Once it gets above the ground, there's a lot of similarities. Uh, Hops isn't that far off from growing like the chocolate Thai from back in the 70s that migrated here in Thai sticks. It actually grew a rather stringy plant that lent itself to being tied off or trellised. Uh, that and being cut back numerous times to stock it up, to make it a heavier stalked plant because, like I said, it wanted to just grow out forever. Hell, I seen Thai plants that were literally 12 to 16 foot tall. That people had tied off the inside of trees. I told the story, I think, on one of the previous podcasts about we used to use my mother's uh, dwarf apple trees uh, as a trellis to tie our colas off on huge plants. Plants that we actually had cracked the seeds for 6 months earlier. So they had significant veg time, significant time to develop big, robust, a lot of lineal growth plants. When you make plants that big, uh, those plants yield a lot of dry flower when they're at harvest. Um, the reason being is that the more you stalk a plant out, the more you create lateral growth, the more terminal shoots you create. The terminal shoots are known as colas in cannabis. They're clusters of buds, just big, long clusters of buds. I've grown lots of colas that weighed a quarter pound. Now, this is the magic part about having not only the equipment and the genes available to us to grow premium. And when I say premium, man, I'm talking about stuff anywhere from 25 up in THC, but also in the right ratios. If it's supposed to have 2%, 3% CBG, if that's the way the original crosses were configured, that's the same thing I want to teach people to do. That's the same genetics I want to sell them. So when they buy a certain strain, let's say they buy sour diesel, I mean, now it's like, what do you want? You want New York sour diesel? You want West Coast sour diesel? It's because there's been so much genetic contamination by breeders who shouldn't have bred the plant to begin with.
Just let me ask you a question. What type of contamination?
Contamination in the fact of genetic contamination. Um, when you start breeding and making seed and you're not sure about the origins of the foundation stock you're using, that's the type of contamination I'm talking. Um, where do you go when you have one distinct varietal landrace, okay, or foundation stock, and another uniquely uh, independent foundation stock, and you breed the two of them, you have a direct controlled result. And out of that result, which is an F1 cross, you will see variations within the children. What I've often compared it to is if a white man and a black woman, or a black man and a white woman, however you want the cross to happen, um, when you do that, the children come out assorted colors, assorted shades. And now, I'm not going to get into the particulars of breeding, but you line breed back through to stabilize those genetics so that you can produce seed or eventually clones that come from seed, from a plant that was produced from seed, um, that are genetically identical. So, see, it's real easy once you've grown a lot and you've done a lot of growing at scale, it's real easy when you look out across the grow of cannabis to see what generation it is, the seed development. Because if it's F1 seed, you got tall plants, you got short plants, you got medium-sized plants, you got fat plants, you got skinny plants. Okay, when it's like F5 through, which is basically in the plant world, breeding the mother and son, backbreeding them numerous generations to lock the trade in. And the trade sin. Now, this has to be done real sensitively. It has to be done by intelligent people. This is the other thing I call contamination in genetics. If it isn't done by people that know what they're doing, they will magnify weaknesses and undesirable traits, and then they'll lock them in, okay, through line breeding.
What's the end result of?
By the way, this is what's known as pheno hunting. When you hear growers talk about the pheno hunt or pheno hunt, what they're talking about is they're selecting certain characters of plants to breed with each other. Go ahead.
What's the end result of a contaminated grow for the product for the consumer?
Okay, now we're talking two types of contamination. The contamination you're referring to that we see a lot with the medical cannabis is molds and mildews. That's pathogens. Okay, that contamination has. I don't want to misrepresent this, but the industry has become rather complacent about. They have conceded to us a stand that as long as it can pass the test, that it's clean of, it can be sold. Now, the way they're doing this is what I referred to in the last podcast, is using radiation and other methods. Methods that causes that organic material or that flower to become a carcinogen. Well, carcinogen's a cancer-causing agent, man. So you see this is a real issue. This is the joke about calling it medical marijuana. What makes it medical marijuana? Well, not the guys growing it. They evidently are too fucking stupid. I'll reserve that. That's an opinion.
Let me ask you, speaking of opinions, in your opinion, what's the best way to educate growers and potential growers and future growers on what to do, what not to do?
The Cannabis College of America. Now, I believe we may change the name of it to the Cannabis College of America, since we are going to teach both hops and hemp. That's the beauty of this arrangement, or what I call the Buds and Brew Superstore. The Buds and Brew Superstore will not only give you and yield you the most delicious flower, strain-specific, medically directive, okay? And when I say medically directive, this is the combination of traits that you want combined of strains to make this strain, which has this effect if you have that problem, okay? Stuff that can be prescribed, not just recommendations made. Like a bud tender, God bless him, giving you a recommendation is literally like spitting on your finger and sticking it up in the air to check the wind direction inside the store. Now, the contamination I'm talking about is the actual corruption. That's the right word for it. Corruption of the genetic foundation of the current strains that are available. One of the things we're going to be doing at the same location, excuse me, and once again, folks, we're talking about the Buds and Brew Superstore. the Cannabis College of America. And the third brand being represented is the Cannabis Center of Genetic Excellence. The purpose of and the reason behind will be to develop from land races strain-specific direct crosses that, again, will have consistent, predictable results on the majority of patients that use it. This is where we start crossing in to calling this medical marijuana. What we have now, with all due respect, is a clusterfuck. What we have now is a fucking card that says, yo, man, I can get some weed and go get high. Come on, I love it, but it's, is it medical? No, it's bullshit.
Do you think that, going back to the Buds and Brew and just all of what we just talked about, do you see what you're going to do and what you're doing as how much of a change do you think that could bring to cannabis industry?
History. And I'm not just saying this to advertise the podcast and to advertise my brands. Okay, I think there'll be people lined up down the road to my store, coming from all over the state to buy our clones, which are clones I believe are also going to be able to be mailed. I mean, we're checking on the legalities of that right now, but I believe I know how to package them so we can dependably ship them within a couple days, or with 1 to 2 day delivery, and people have great success in rooting them. All they have to do is just simply follow the instructions. This plant isn't rocket science. What this plant is a plant that its pattern, its growth, the whole nature, everything around it, as a great deal of wives' tales and bullshit mixed in. So, I mean, excuse me, my whole life until I was actually able to invest enough money that I could do a controlled input scenario like I did in Florida. See, what was so nice in Florida, dude, I had labs. Okay, my grow was 2 separate labs. One was my fucking bedroom, one was my flower room. And my flower room was like the little chamber of horrors. It was so productive. And if you look on the podcast in the little menu bar up in the very top right-hand corner and hit on history of cannabis, the very first picture that'll open up, you'll see the brands listed on the one side, and you'll see on the other side some stats from the R&D work that we did with those lights. And we killed it. We ended up getting 2 grams of fucking premium flower. Okay, we're talking 30 to 30 or 36%. And that we have CO or COAs for. God only knows what we don't. And we did it in record time. We used large plants. That was, again, I'm not going to give up the secrets that I'm going to teach at Cannabis College on the podcast, but we used large plants that were vegged for a while. And when you put those plants in the flower, they make a product that you cannot make the way they're doing in commercial grows. Now, let me explain what they're doing in commercial grows. Is that what you want to know there, ganja guy?
That's one of the things I want to know, Dr. Dank. The other thing I want to talk about too is I'm not trying to be a salesman here, but I'm just trying to explain to the audience, with all of the people that are in cannabis, what separates what you're doing and makes you stand out from everybody else? What makes that so special or different?
Same reason as after I got busted in Florida and was forced to come out of the cannabis closet is what I refer to it as. was very easy to make friends because I would just start telling them about the weed that I grew and describing the different strains that I had grown and sold and the localities I sold it at, where it was distributed. And not like we were just doing that great of a volume, but I mean, we're still moving like 20, 25 pounds a month, or about every 2 months. So he's moving 10 pounds a month. That was enough to make a mark. And the other thing that was real distinct about all my brands or all my strains that I grew there is I played with temperature a lot. There's big advantages to growing when you know how to recreate the outdoor environment indoors. It's one of the, and that's another facet of what I'm going to be teaching at the Cannabis College is how to do that effectively. Because people think, I'm growing inside, I'm God, and I can do this, this, and this. It's going to make it that much better. No, man. God's already got the best thing. What's up there?
We were talking about the consumer aspect of it. What I guess I'm trying to try to explain more about the consumer aspect of it. What are people getting at dispensaries now that they're not? What are people getting now at dispensaries that they don't have yet because your product's not out there?
Okay, number one, the product is being sold at dispensaries. What they're not telling you is if you got to look at the full panels right after they were harvested, the grows were harvested, and the final panels right before they package it to sell it to you, they would see that it had problems. A lot of the grows are experiencing pathogen issues. Some are experiencing even worse things than that. I mean, some of them literally got to go through some issue or some flushing issues.
Contamination?
Well, yeah, because some of them have, depending on the grow, and I have to watch how I say this because, again, I don't want to misrepresent anything. If you have a lockdown grow where there is no outside air coming into your building, once you kill all the insects inside that building, technically you never have any more insect issues. That's not the reality. The other reality is there's greenhouse grows, and where they do have, there's dirty flower. I mean, there's, for the amount of play and propaganda that they come off with on this medical marijuana bullshit, it's what makes it a lie. It's and it's disheartening because they have. Well, let me put it this way: when we first got the Farm Act bill of 2018, that allowed us to take hemp or industrial hemp and also grow cannabinoid hemp as long as the percentage of THC was low enough. The medical licenses were already taken up by people that wanted to put up multiple chunks of millions, tens of millions of dollars so they can afford the legal license, which is one of many of many people that feel the same way as I do. Why was this exclusively limited to the ultra wealthy? There's no reason there has to be a size regulation that you got to spend $100 million on your fucking grow house. I mean, man, I had a $51,000 grow that was kicking ass and producing 10 pounds a month. Now that's not counting the price of the structure, but it's counting the lighting and the other equipment in there. Now we will have various types of lighting, from the most intense to the most efficient, available at the Buds and Brew Buds and Brew Superstore, along with kits to brew beer in the most efficient manner with the least amount of mess. This is what I believe the market's wanting, demanding. Now, what's the advantages of this? Well, beer's gotten expensive, man. fuck, you can't drink. It's like a Yuengling beer. If you go to Sheetz and buy it by the 6-pack, I think it comes out to like $1.25 or more of beer. Um, if you're in a bottle, uh, you can brew your own beer, have the fun and the experience of doing it. It's even something that's fun to do with your kids. It attracts their attention. Curiosity is the same way. And this is very traditional too. This isn't like, this is trend setting new. Oh, this is Larry's woke bullshit. No, this is nothing woke about it other than just waking up about our past and our heritage. Now, that being said, that will be one facet. That and growing the hops. The growing of hops is a trip, man. Growing it inside in tents, growing it outside in the sun where it grows so fucking huge. Um, I was involved years ago in grows where we alternated a row of cannabis and a row of hops, and a row of cannabis and a row of hops. And we're in an area that's closer to the equator where you have a sharper angle of the sun. You get more direct sunlight. You need some way to shade that off. You either use it an artificial means by a shade cloth, or you use something like interrowing with something that grows tall and shade wise. And that's what hops does. Hops, you put up a big pole over here, a big pole over here, anchor them well, put guidelines down so they can't buckle when you put tension in the middle, and you put a cable across the top. And off that table, you take hemp rope and you drop, isn't that ironic? Big heavy hemp rope, and you drop them hemp ropes down about every foot, 16 inches. And as the hops grow, the vines swirl around the hemp rope and they make walls of beautiful fucking leaf and these huge nugs of hops. And the better you do it, the denser and harder the nugs are. The same way, the better you do the cannabis. Now, the secondary result of this is that you are putting the flowering cannabis, which does not want to be in direct light in real high temperatures, you're putting it in a shade zone. You're doing it natural. See, and this is some of the things we teach you. I mean, we have two different courses at Cannabis College, or we're anticipating. One we call the master course, the other one the pro course. I believe one is $300 or $299. The other one is or $399 or $400. They're basically the more expensive one gives you 2 more contact hours, actually 14 hours total contact hours instead of 12. It gets in more of controlling pests and some of the minor and simpler breeding issues on top of the growing skills. That's why it's a more expensive course or seminar. Both of them are in seminar form that you can easily complete in 1 week's time. Now, at the same location, we do anticipate a tissue culture lab. A tissue culture lab is actually cloning at a cellular level, which, to make a distinction between the two worlds for those who don't get it, when you take a cutting, let's say 2 inches long, a couple of nodes off a cannabis plant, and you root that using rooting hormone into a little rope cube. That is a traditional or a cutting clone. They're both clones. A cutting turns into a clone once it sprouts roots. Now, if you can do that by taking a little nick of a cell or a cell or two and putting it in a test tube in gelatin and rooting a plant from there, You can literally take one mother, let's say that's 3 foot tall and 2.5 feet in diameter. Fuck, man, you can make fucking 400, 500,000 genetically identical offsprings. Okay? That every one of those plants are guaranteed to be feminine. Every fucking last one of them. They're proven femmes. They're cloned from a female plant. Okay, unless some ridiculous stress causes them to hermaphrodite, which is another story, and it's something else you'll learn at the Cannabis College if you come. But, you know, this is pure stock. Now, we'll have those plants available from clones through 1 week old, which will be about 4-5 inches tall, and 1 gallon pots already up potted for you. So you have time to make your arrangements before your final up potting in your grow. Or if you so desire, just to short veg them like they do in commercial growing, you can grow them in a 1 gallon pot for a fucking month and flower them out and get mediocre weed. And that's what they do in the commercial grows. They don't long veg anything. When I say long veg, I'm talking about keeping a plant in a vegetative state for like 3-4 months to years, depending on the way you're set up. When you cut the light back on clean genetics that have not been contaminated with the wrong strains, such as the Ruderalis, which is an automatic that triggers without being on the solar clock. If you work from clean genetics, as long as the plant is seeing more than 12 hours of daylight per day, it will stay in perpetual vegetative state. Yeah, there's your lesson for the day. Bonus from the Cannabis College of America.
It seems like, from the perspective of, I keep going back to the consumer aspect of it, it's like the wool's being pulled over their eyes, and they're not being told the truth, and they're buying products that might not be best for them because the people behind that.
Are you talking about the people with medical marijuana cards?
I am.
Oh, they're getting ass raped. I mean, this is wholesale slaughter, man. Seriously. I mean, you got to look around, but Judas is here some fucking where. It's a clown show, Chris. Okay, you can't take people that it takes years to learn the differences when you're growing from the grower side. It takes years to learn and to tweak strains on the ideal ways to most efficiently propagate, grow, and flower that particular strain from another strain. Now, how are you going to teach people how to differentiate between the effects of various ratios of cannabinoids, along with percentages of terpenes? And that's another thing we got to talk about real quick. The terpenes is what hooks the hops together. Son of a bitch, if they don't produce the same terpenes. Why the fuck weren't we ever told this? Do you ever remember in school somebody saying, oh, do you know the reason that there's skunky bear and there's real skunky weed? It's because it's the same terpene.
Never.
Okay, they've known about terpenes for fucking 100 years.
Never.
Yeah, I know. It's really ironic. Really ironic. Looks like Ganja Guy wants to talk about the doctors that are misled, just like some of the rest of the industry.
And the reason why I'm going to talk about that is because it's a big issue.
It's a very big issue,
because that's on the consumer level, but also it's on the level of just taking care of yourself and having trust with your doctor, trust with the medical field. If they're not prescribing you something that clearly does good for you, why not?
Okay, it's prejudiced. Um, there's no drug salesman coming around to their office handing out fucking bags of free samples, saying, "Here, take these home to your family." By the way, here, no. It's all business, Chris. They don't want it. They don't want to admit that there's alternative methods to the current methods they're employing that are superior. Now, everything is relative. Even words have to be put in the context of a sentence to really get the true meaning from it. Now, with that thought being said, that even words have to be put in context to get the true meaning, they know in clinical tests the drug they're touting or recommending does have a positive effect. Now, I haven't met one fucking physician, not one, including my own physicians. I'll give you a good example about statin. A statin drug. Statin drugs, if you're a weight training or athlete, has a way, especially as you age, to give you lots of muscle cramps, lots of problems, even with dehydration. So it's just, you avoid it. If you don't need it, you don't take it, man. I mean, fuck, you're working out, you're very athletic. So, it starts becoming into a pro and con thing. But just like every other pharmaceutical, they tell you this drug. I mean, I like to always make the reference of, use this cream and it will clear up your acne. It may make you change colors, poop yourself, urinate freely, but it will clean up your skin. And I mean that's nothing, man. Most of the if you really listen to the advertisements that we have to encounter everyday life from Big Pharma, do you realize how many of those that give the side effects at a lower volume, at a faster pace, after they tell you the initial purpose of the drug, that involve death, debilitation? I mean, it's ridiculous, man. And here's a drug that cures shit. At this point, if they were fair about it, you're looking over a dozen different ailments that it significantly helps with. Some it definitively cures. And that's before we even start talking about the industrial side, which we're going to talk more about, by the way, in coming weeks. We're going to have Stephen Fonts on here, which is the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technical Officer of Cultivate Hemp Solutions out of Georgia. Stephen's who we're working with on a almost 1,000-acre grow of industrial hemp for 2025, which will be part of a 50,000-acre grow that's going to be designated for natural or renewable natural gas going down into Louisiana and Texas. We feel it's going to be an historic broadcast. We feel the announcing of the contract and all being signed and sealed and delivered is the start of a new day for the small American farmer in the United States. And God only knows, I hope to be part of that. So, Ganja Guy.
Yes, Dr. Dank.
let's get back to what the question you asked was.
I want to circle back to
the doctors that tell you bullshit and try to justify it with lies.
If you look at the death rates from opioids, okay, now we're not talking black market, we're talking just prescription. And if you factor in all the opioid deaths, compare that to all the deaths caused from marijuana. How many deaths have been caused by marijuana?
If you have any objectivity whatsoever, it's plain to see that there has never been one cannabis caused death in the history of mankind that's been recorded and documented. There's been deaths which were caused by other stimuli, that cannabis was in the blood. But that's not what killed the person. So, it's almost like, I'm not going to get political, but, lately it seems like we're in a barrage of having piss sprayed all over our fucking face and being told it's raining outside with a terrible storm. When we're not really pissing on you. It doesn't smell like piss. Okay? It doesn't taste like piss if you're opening your mouth, but it's just rain. So, this is just another day with another line of bullshit with that. I am concerned. I was told, and I might even have the girl on the podcast in coming weeks, a young lady that used to work for me at a head shop I had. She's pregnant, and she was pretty much given a tour of horrors, being that she told her main medical practitioner, who was overseeing her pregnancy, that she used cannabis and she wanted to get a medical card. And this woman made a big deal of it. I mean, made it like she was a heroin addict. Made it like as if they drew blood out of the umbilical cord or did testing of the solution out of the umbilical cord, and it showed positive for THC. The baby would be taken off her at birth. I mean, that the baby would stand high percentages of being mentally retarded. Fuck, Chris. I have 4 boys that were all born to a woman before she was 20 years old. Okay, from 14 to now, actually started giving birth at 15. Between 15 and 20 years old. Okay. What can I say? I've always been a freak that loved to freak. Now, that being said, and I'm going to get real direct about this. All 4 of those boys are amazing when it comes to intelligence, perception, ability, skill set. I couldn't be prouder. And to have that success rate, 4 out of 4, I believe I'm very blessed. And so, like I said, I use myself for a guinea pig. Everything I tell you about cannabis, not only have I read, studied, and done extensive research on, I've done research and trials on myself. So I know the net result. That's the reason for my podcast, folks. I'm here to tell you the truth. And any more questions on that? I mean, I'm going to have Marina, the girl I'm talking about, I'm going to have her on in like 2 weeks just to talk about what she was actually told, because I was shocked. I mean, at this day and time, I mean, she had to go to a special consultation to have her to get her medical card approved, because she was an addict of marijuana.
There's a fear. There's a fear about this in the medical community, because I know doctors who are completely 100% for it. They will prescribe it to you to help you because they don't want to prescribe you pain pills.
Right.
other side of it is I also know doctors who were like, no, I read a study and the data suggested that marijuana is bad. Marijuana causes this problem, that problem, that problem. So there's just a lack of consistency. There's a lack of
Going
transparency.
back 35 years ago, there was a woman professor from Harvard, from their school of medicine, that did a study in Jamaica on Jamaican women, Rasta women. And she would take women that hadn't even conceived yet. I mean, that's where she would start her test or her trial act and documentation. Then, and these are women that smoked anywhere from 4 to sometimes 6 spliffs a day. Spliffs is a big ass fucking dude, man. A lot of people think it has tobacco in it. No, that's a European thing. If you want to go by pure definition, a spliff's just a great big fucking joint, tapered joint. It sort of has a funnel to it because you roll it that way. So when you get a vortex effect, when you draw it, you get a heavier hit through a smaller orifice. Yeah.
I keep going back to the consumer because there's more consumers that are going to buy the product than are people that are going to grow the product.
Here's the biggest issue about what we're proposing with the store is the price that product is going to become available to your average everyday cannabis user. Right now, and I'm almost ashamed to say this, but it was caused by the way the market was set up. So I'm not going to blame it on the medical marijuana user or cardholder, because for a lot of these guys, the chance, and women likewise, the chance to be able to have access to cannabis without doing it illegally was a big, big issue. I mean, I had an investor the other day ask me, why am I so confident? Because I was talking about moving tens of thousands of clones immediately, as soon as recreational come in play in Pennsylvania. And right now, matter of fact, I'm checking the laws on whether we can export clones up into New York State and into Ohio, with their laws changing. Okay. The reason that I'm so confident is because let me give you a couple examples. I've driven, and I'm not a junkie to cannabis. I mean, this is like, I'm out of weed. I need to go pick up weed. So I have weed. So when I work, I'm happy and enjoying weed or work, and I'm not making myself problems. Okay. So at those times, back in the black market days, before I could just go to the dispensary and buy flour, there was times at 12 o'clock at night, man. You had to wait till somebody came home from work, and you had to drive like 20, 30, 40, 75 miles to go get like, a quarter pound. So you had it for a week or two. And so why am I confident people will drive a great distance if they can buy clones? The question was based around, well, people only are going to be allowed 6 plants per person, and a household of 2 adults, 12 plants. Well, 2 different things there. Number one, I'm going to sell immature plants in various stages of growth, but I will have plants large enough that you can take a plant home that's like 4 feet high and 3 foot in diameter and put it into immediate bloom. And that plant, in roughly 60 days, will give you some exquisite flower, and all guaranteed. Now, what's the price on all this? You ask me. So, because they get to do it at home, and because they get to do it on their own, and because it's going to be a better product, it must be more expensive. No, man, you're going to be able to grow your flower in the comforts of your own property. My research, my indoor grows have averaged right around $127 per pound. My outdoor grows I've grown for as cheap as $22 a pound. And I'm talking about outdoor grows where we had plastic culture and grew through the plastic, and it was all controlled, irrigation set up that was connected to your hose, that was on a timer. I mean, um,
Let's go back here for a second. Let's talk about.
now we're talking about flour.
Yes.
Better flour than if you take the price that you're paying for it per eighth and per quarter at the dispensary. Better flour than they're charging you $2,000 to $3,000, even more for per pound. That's the comparison. We're not talking just, oh, I'm going to save 20%. No, just by playing around and learning how to grow weed, you're going to, okay, I had a laugh. A guy gave me a good example the other day. He says, the average blue collar worker, it's a shame to say, but if he gets a paycheck that right now he's getting $500 in the envelope, if he's a medical marijuana user, he probably spending 200 to 250 of that at the dispensary.
Right.
Which has to do with two things. The price that they've kept up and artificially have held up by whatever you want to call it, price fixing. That's what it is. And also the way they market to the man. Now, if that man is spending a third to half of his fucking weekly usable income on his medication, now you got to put this in perspective. Oh, that means he's a drug addict. Nah, man, it's no different than the guy that spends that much every week on fucking beer. And I know people that literally drink a case of beer excuse me, Lord, literally drink a case of beer a night. If you're going to get really fucked up.
Let me ask you this.
How much is a case of beer now? Must be like 20 bucks. It has to be somewhere close to what you spend on weed if you buy it at the dispensary.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. What will the immediate impact be on the community with the Buds and Brew Superstore? Because it seems like it's changing it's changing the perception, it's changing the reality of what can be done. What's the immediate impact of the Buds and Brew?
It's a very simple equation. It's taking the truth about things that have been masked and lied about, and people have been misled over for literally fucking decades, going on a century, and telling the truth about them and exposing what you can get out of it. My oldest son loves brewing. He's Sean, Sean. He's homebrewed for probably 15, 20 years now. Damn, man, he has some of the best delicious wheat ales you ever wanted to taste. It's fun to sample them and flavor them, or flavor test them with them, and none of it's harmful to you. I mean, and now I want to put things back into perspective and take a minute to put cannabis in perspective with pharmaceuticals. Remember earlier I said everything's relative. If you have two things and they both help relieve or cure an illness, and one of them has 10 side effects, negative side effects, which may possibly be, especially if they happen in multiples or in conjunction with each other, considerably worse than the one single side effect you're going to have from cannabis. Well, the two side effects, depending on what the genetics are, it might make you sleepy or feel like eating. God, give me that versus what I experienced on opiates. I used to, opiates is really freaky because the more you take them, the higher the dosage you need to hit the same place. So when I taught at trade school, on a day that I was having a lot of pain, for severe nerve pain, I would take enough so I could tolerate it. And then usually within an hour or two after I dosed myself, I would break into profuse sweats. It was really embarrassing, man, because everybody knew you were on something. And, but that's, nobody talks about that with the opiates. They just leave that, chase that underneath. Because, hey, man, it makes me feel really good. I don't have pain. No, number one, it doesn't take the pain away. They get you high just like we get you high.
It's a Band-Aid. It's a temporary Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
There have been, I was watching on the interview with one of the world's strongest men. 6'8", he's 400 pounds. He's a big guy. And he gave up pain pills in favor of marijuana.
Oh, no question.
Because it was the marijuana is better for him, and it's not bad for his liver. It's not killing him the way the opioids would. A guy that size was taking a lot of opioids because of his size, and he's like, you know what? I tried cannabis, and it changed my life in 2 seconds.
I always fall back on the very first edition of Schwarzenegger on Pumping Iron. At the end of Pumping Iron, he's laying on the couch smoking a big old joint. Now, Schwarzenegger, just like a lot of us, are living testimonials to the state of health that you can maintain using high levels of cannabis for recreational. Once again, other than being a way of coping with pain, that and during COVID, I think I told you the story. Nobody could figure out why my lungs were so open, and I had COVID so severely, and it had to do. I was hitting dabs, man, on my rig, like one every 10 minutes. And I'd hack out this shit. I'd take a deep breath and relax for a little bit, enjoy the buzz. I'd start getting congested again. I'd do another dab. And the neighbor downstairs here, used to lose it. I'd come out front door and he'd be like, man, what the fuck? I said, dude, I'm dabbing it, She said, I thought you had COVID. I said, dude. Okay. See those oxygen tanks that they brought me and that oxygen machine? Have a need to be on that. So, we are at 1 hour. Well, I think it's time to take a little break for our sponsors and advertisers. Again, we talked a lot about them today, the brands we represent. Oh, and I'm glad you brought this up. Ganja Guy, I think you're a cool motherfucker.
Thank you, Dr.
Dan. At the same store, same location, which hopefully I'll be divulging and finalizing here in coming weeks. We're also going to sell a number of different tinctures that we make in-house. Some of these are made for specific purposes, for relief of specific ailments. Other ones we can custom blend just for the to correct or to implement what you need help with. This is a unique aspect. None of these will be high THC or even moderate THC. unless we're using Delta 8. We'll get into that more in coming podcasts, but it's just another aspect of the store that'll be unique. Basically, everything cannabis will be there, from growing it through the genetics to grow it from. And like I said, the hops right next to it. And on the cannabis side, that's the one last thing I wanted to bring up. Probably the last thing to actually be introduced in our inventory will be consumer level extraction equipment. So you'll be able to extract the oils from the flower you grew. We're making it last because you got to grow the flower before you got the shit to get the concentrate from. And but there's some consumer level machinery. Hopefully, we're going to be able to price it competitively with the internet, and along with the internet, that they can't give you, as we'll give you hands-on support in house, right local. So, starting to lose my voice. I guess it's time to go and celebrate Father's Day with the rest of my family. God bless everyone. Have a very, very wonderful Father's Day. This week's episode sponsored by the Cannabis College of America. This week's episode sponsored by Buds and Brew Superstore.